Look, folks, even great actors are only ever a few historic duds away from possible career collapse. But thankfully, these actors clearly saw the writing on the wall. And so, as a sequel to our previous piece on the very subject, I am Gareth, this is Whatculture, and here are actors who saved their careers by turning down movie roles. Keanu Reeves turned down Speed 2 Cruise Control. Given that 1994's Speed was a storming commercial success for Keanu Reeves, his decision not to return for 1997's Speed 2 Cruise Control was met with many raised eyebrows. Hell, Studio Fox took enough offense that they effectively blacklisted Reeves from their projects for the better part of a decade. And while this could have marked a dire downturn for Reeves' career, it was ultimately anything but. Rather than star in Speed 2, which was a Razzie-winning box office flop with Jason Patric replacing Reeves, Reeves instead briefly performed Hamlet on stage, co-starred with Al Pacino in The Devil's Advocate, and then headlined a little movie called The Matrix. You may have heard of it. While on paper, this weirdo sci-fi passion project from the directors of erotic thriller Bound could have been a total mess, it became one of the most defining action films of the 1990s, birthed a media franchise, and cemented itself as Reeves' most iconic role. Had Reeves agreed to Speed 2, it's safe to say he would have missed the boat. Or rather, not.
Zooey Deschanel preferred the idea of long-term New Girl over The Office. Brilliant showings in the likes of Elf, Yes Man, and 500 Days of Summer had helped establish Zooey Deschanel as one to potentially watch going forward in the mid-2000s. But it was a proposed role on the American version of The Office that proved to be the catalyst behind the star taking on her most notable and acclaimed role to date. As Deschanel herself would admit during the first episode of the Welcome to Our Show New Girl Rewatch podcast, the actor was all set to pop up in the smash hit mockumentary show before said New Girl script suddenly dropped onto her desk. And if it wasn't for the Office arc she was set to execute opening her mind to the idea of a TV venture, she wouldn't have been open to reading a TV script in the first place. So after sensing there was more fun to be had in exploring a character for longer than a few guest appearances, or even a 2-hour feature, the eventual Jessica Day actor decided to gamble on being one of the first stars to really cross over between TV and film at the time, with this New Girl venture. And said risk paying off ultimately paved the way for the star once again becoming the name on everyone's lips after the big screen debacle that was Your Highness.
Tom Hanks turned down Super Mario Bros. Tough though it is to believe, Tom Hanks was very nearly cast in 1993's live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie. Yep. Though online reports vary on whether Hanks was set to play Mario or Luigi, the former certainly makes more sense considering that Hanks was already a bona fide movie star by the early 90s. Hanks ended up turning down the part, however, and instead went on to star in Philadelphia and Forrest Gump back-to-back, winning consecutive Best Actor Oscars in 1994 and 1995 for his work. Not too shabby. Conversely, the stink of Mario followed the late great Bob Hoskins around for years afterwards, and according to co-star John Leguizamo, the pair resorted to getting wasted on set in order to make it through takes. Had Hanks led the Mario movie, he would have likely missed out on at least the Oscar for Philadelphia, and given Super Mario Bros. Status as one of the 1990s most infamous flops, it might have also blocked Hanks from being cast in Forrest Gump, wiping out both wins in one fell swoop. Instead, Hanks confirmed himself to be one of the most beloved and celebrated actors of his generation, and the rest is history. Now, I've got a quick question for you. What movie do you wish your favorite actor turned down? You let me know in the comments right down below.
Hugh Grant wasn't comfortable signing on before seeing 2.5 scripts. After the absolute shocker that was Did You Hear About the Morgans? Yes, I did, they weren't very good. Hugh Grant soon found himself on the outside looking in for a spell. Despite the movie business seemingly not being all that keen on the long-term leading man though, it wasn't as though the actor was short of opportunities on the small screen. In fact, Grant actually ended up being offered the chance to step into the leading role in 2.5 Men back in 2011 in the wake of Charlie Sheen exiting the hit series. Yeah, the 4 Weddings and a Funeral star ultimately opted to pass up on that proposed part, stating that they didn't have a script or a new character. They just said, "Trust us, we'll create one." Admitting to being too scared to sign up without a script, the role eventually went to Ashton Kutcher as the CBS show's ratings would steadily decline over the coming years. While Grant's reluctance to step into the Charlie void actually set the stage for him to find new success as a character actor both on the big and small screen in the time that would follow.
Zendaya turned down Aaliyah, the Princess of R&B. 2014's Lifetime biography of late R&B music star Aaliyah was originally set to star Zendaya in the lead role, and marked a point at which a then 17-year-old Zendaya was beginning to transition from Disney child star into serious dramatic actress. However, she eventually dropped out of the role, citing a multitude of reasons: the film's low production values, a lack of approval from Aaliyah's family, and resulting issues with using her music, requiring cover versions to be recorded. Zendaya was later replaced by Alexandra Shipp, and given that Aaliyah, the Princess of R&B, went on to be panned by both critics and Aaliyah's fans, it was most certainly a bullet dodged on Zendaya's part. More to the point, given that the film was released barely a year before Zendaya was cast as MJ in Spider-Man: Homecoming, if she'd taken the biopic role, it is entirely possible Disney wouldn't have considered her for MJ at all, especially accepting their general aversion to controversy. Instead, the Spider-Man part massively raised Zendaya's profile with the mainstream, paving the way for her to become a genuine mega movie star in the years that followed her MCU debut. She did alright.
Michael Keaton didn't feel like committing to a long-term lost project. He may be enjoying one of the strongest spells of his career so far in recent times, but Michael Keaton was in a very different place in his life back in the early 2000s. Largely disappearing from the mainstream and not exactly bringing in the sort of acclaim and box office numbers he once had earlier in his career, Keaton happily entertained the idea of joining forces with J.J. Abrams on the small screen, as the talented creator looked to unleash his new Lost series on the world. Only what at first seemed like a rather intriguing idea, that being showing up as a variation of the Jack Shephard leading role, only to be killed off late in episode 1, soon began to change as production on the show picked up steam. Instead of being a one-and-done appearance, it soon became apparent that Jack would have a much more significant role in the show, and that was something Keaton simply had no interest in pursuing. And judging from the directions Keaton and eventual Jack Matthew Fox's careers have gone down in the years since Lost became a monster TV hit, it seems the rejuvenated big screen acting titan was right to steer clear of this particular long-term commitment.
Jim Carrey turned down The Master of Disguise. Jim Carrey had a phenomenally successful decade of comedy and drama movies from the mid-90s through to the mid-2000s. But even Carrey's seemingly unstoppable momentum could have been killed by a project this ill-conceived. The Master of Disguise was a 2002 adventure comedy co-written by Saturday Night Live and Wayne's World star Dana Carvey. Though at one point, Carrey was apparently in consideration for the lead role of Pistachio Disguisey. Yep, that's the name. Carrey ended up turning it down, leaving Carvey to star and immediately torpedo his career into oblivion, given that The Master of Disguise was universally panned by critics and landed Carvey 2 nominations at the Stinkers Bad Movie Awards: Worst Actor and Worst Male Fake Accent. Not what you want on the OCV. Carvey's career never recovered, while Carrey went on to star in Bruce Almighty, which remained his highest grossing film for a full 20 years before recently being dethroned by Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Carrey also followed it up with fan-favorite projects such as Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and a series of unfortunate events. Yet, even an actor as statuesque as he would have struggled to escape the shadow of the Master of Disguise. That is quite the shadow. If you're finding this look at actors who saved their careers by saying no to these roles quite interesting, then tap that subscribe button down below for even more Whatculture videos in your life.
Jamie Campbell Bower went on to bigger things after dodging a brief Game of Thrones cameo. When discussing the sudden cancellation of Game of Thrones spin-off series Blood Moon, the star was once attached to, Jamie Campbell Bower was quick to note how everything happens for a reason. And the same could be said of the actor's last dance with the world of dragons and White Walkers, with the eventual Stranger Things big bad once being in line to rock up in the first ever scene of the original Game of Thrones pilot. Despite initially appearing in said prologue for Game of Thrones as Sir Waymar Royce, however, Campbell Bower would ultimately have to turn down the call to reshoot said sequence later down the road, due to his commitments to the incoming Camelot show, one where he'd be playing none other than King Arthur. And while said Camelot project wouldn't exactly immediately catapult him to superstar status, it did prove that the star was capable of holding his own in a meatier role. If he'd turned down that leading role in exchange for a quick White Walker death, maybe Campbell Bower's TV career wouldn't have paved the way for his game-changing recent work as the nightmarish Vecna too. It's worth noting that his Royce replacement, Rob Ostler, while effective in the fleeting part, didn't go on to shake up the Upside Down or make much of a splash anywhere else post-chilly opening scene death.
Anne Bancroft turned down Mummy Dearest. The infamous 1981 Joan Crawford biographical drama Mommy Dearest was originally set to star the great Anne Bancroft as Crawford, though during pre-production the Oscar-winning actress departed the project, allegedly due to her distaste for the shooting script. This led to the part being played instead by the equally brilliant Faye Dunaway, who had considerable momentum coming off her 1977 Best Actress Oscar win for Network. Mommy Dearest ultimately underperformed at the box office, and though Dunaway's turn was praised by some, the film's campy theatrical tone proved heavily polarizing with critics and general audiences, while Crawford's family condemned the film for its characterization of the actress as abusive. Despite her undeniable talent, Dunaway's career never recovered. She received a Worst Actress Razzie for the film and landed few offers for prestigious roles in the decades that followed, ensuring she hasn't scored a single Oscar nomination since winning one in 1977. Bancroft, meanwhile, continued to enjoy a career as a fated actress. While Dunaway ended up playing a thankless villain role in Supergirl by the mid-80s, Bancroft received her 5th Best Actress Oscar nomination in 1986 for Agnes of God.
Jon Favreau wanted to work on other projects instead of being Chandler. Had a young Jon Favreau opted to understandably accept the chance to line up alongside the likes of Jennifer Aniston and co. in an upcoming sitcom that looked destined to take the planet by storm, perhaps the prolific star wouldn't have actually been given a shot at flexing his creative muscles elsewhere in the first place. As it goes, Favreau was actually initially offered the part of Chandler Bing in Friends, but the up-and-coming comedy star decided against signing on the dotted line in favor of pursuing other work. He would still stop by the show for a few appearances as Pete Becker in 1997, but it's hard to imagine a world where he would have found the time to create the likes of Elf and Swingers, setting the stage for Lion King and Mandalorian success down the line, while also trying to juggle cups of coffee in Central Perk too.
Mads Mikkelsen turned down Fantastic Four. Mads Mikkelsen was still a relatively unknown actor outside of his native Denmark in the mid-2000s, but he very nearly became a blockbuster star in all the wrong ways when he auditioned for 2005's Fantastic Four movie. Mikkelsen was in the mix to play the superhero supergroup's leader Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, though in various interviews has discussed the experience, revealing that he attended a humiliating audition which caused him to walk out and never look back. Mikkelsen stated that he resented being asked to pretend that he had long arms, prompting him to apologize to the producers and walk out, knowing he was a poor fit for the gig. The role of Mr. Fantastic was instead played by Johan Grufford, while Mikkelsen instead avoided getting locked into a duo of critically panned superhero movies, and was cast instead as Le Chiffre, the villain of Casino Royale, the very next year. This brilliant James Bond role is what firmly put Mikkelsen on the map, almost certainly playing a major part in him being cast as Hannibal Lecter in the Hannibal TV series years later. Grufford has certainly maintained steady employment over the years, though it's safe to say that Fantastic Four didn't really do his career any favors, did it?
Rob Lowe wouldn't have been able to do Parks and Rec had he starred in Grey's Anatomy. Rob Lowe was very much aware of how big an opportunity had been sent his way when he was suddenly offered the role of eventual McDreamy Derek Shepherd as Grey's Anatomy was set to begin production. The only problem was that the actor had already agreed to star in CBS's Dr. Vega show, and with ABC not exactly smashing it out of the park at the time, Lowe sensed the odds were just too stacked to turn down the Vegas spot. We all make mistakes. But far from regretting the missed apparent $70 million payday, Lowe has gone on record to note how he doesn't feel he would have nailed the part in quite the same way Patrick Dempsey eventually did. And had he not turned down the role, he likely wouldn't have been able to commit himself to the much-loved part of upbeat city manager Chris Traeger in Parks and Recreation, or many of his other subsequent big and small screen roles for that matter. And as Lowe himself would put it, if it had been me, the fans wouldn't have called me McDreamy, they would have called me Rob Lowe. So maybe his passing up on the part was best for all involved, eh?
Tim Allen turned down The Cat in the Hat. 2003's mega-budget adaptation of Dr. Seuss' The Cat in the Hat was originally set to star Tim Allen in the title role, who intended to bring a sure creepiness to his portrayal. However, numerous stalled production starts caused scheduling conflicts with Allen's lead role in The Santa Claus 2, and so Allen ended up dropping out of The Cat in the Hat, with Mike Myers eventually filling the void. Now, The Cat in the Hat's astronomical, critical, and commercial failure didn't kill Myers' live-action career dead, but it definitely set him on the wrong path, as his desperate 2008 follow-up, The Love Guru, was an even more infamous dud, hammering the final nail in Myers' lead status outside of the Shrek movies. As for Allen, The Santa Claus 2 was a sizable hit, and though he had his fair share of flop projects in the years that followed, he peppered just enough hits in between to keep his star profile from fading. If he had a megabomb like The Cat in the Hat on his filmography though, Hollywood would have probably been decidedly less forgiving of his underperforming projects.
Whitney Houston turned down The Cosby Show to pursue her career in music. Long before she became one of the most well-known music sensations ever to grace planet Earth, Whitney Houston was simply a fiercely confident youngster with designs on making it big. And said desire soon resulted in the star actually turning down a chance to be one of the main players in a little series by the name of The Cosby Show. As one of the famous sitcoms directors Jay Sandrick would eventually reveal, Houston came incredibly close to being cast in the role of Sandra Huxtable, but in response to being told to sign a contract to consistently show up on the series, a young Houston replied by explaining, "I want to be a singer. I can't be in every show. I want to be in every tour." And despite replying with an honest no to Sandrick's questions over whether she had a record deal or had toured at any point recently, that still didn't stop Houston from believing she would make it big in the industry. Sure enough, upon passing up the role in favor of focusing on her music career, a legendary star was ultimately born.
Jon Hamm turned down Green Lantern. Many actors were in talks to portray Hal Jordan in 2011's Green Lantern movie, and one of Warner Brothers' top choices for the part was Mad Men's Jon Hamm. Hamm confirmed that he walked away from the project, saying that was one I definitely didn't want to do, and as we all know, it eventually went to Ryan Reynolds. But there is no way to not view this as a massive bullet dodged for Hamm, who, given the enormously demanding nature of a superhero movie shoot, would have presumably held up production on Mad Men, which was several seasons into its run when Green Lantern was being shot. It's impossible to predict the knock-on effect this could have had on the show and Hamm's eventual long overdue Best Actor Emmy win for it in 2015. But Green Lantern flopping would have been decidedly more harmful to his career than it was for Ryan Reynolds. Reynolds at least had his Deadpool passion project in his back pocket, and Green Lantern's failure ultimately just gave him a ton of self-deprecating joke fodder for those films. It's tough to picture Hamm's career having quite the same resilience post-Green Lantern, and Reynolds also met his future wife Blake Lively while shooting it, so it seems like everything basically worked out for the best here. Nicole Kidman turned down Catwoman. Several prominent actresses were in contention to play Catwoman in the 2004 Solo movie, with the most famous name undeniably being Nicole Kidman. After Warner Brothers' first choice, Ashley Judd, dropped out, the studio approached Kidman, who also ended up turning the part down, at which point the studio was finally successful with their third pick, Halle Berry. Berry was fresh off an historic Best Actress Oscar win for her work on Monsters Ball, and on paper the feline superhero certainly seemed like a firm fit for the actress' talents. And yet, Catwoman was enough of a critical and commercial dud that it not only won Berry the 2005 Razzie for Worst Actress, which she gamely accepted in person, but is widely accepted to have impacted the caliber of role she was subsequently offered. For the 20 years since, Berry's career remains one of the most maddening examples of a post-Oscars slump. Her filmography littered with critical and box office flops, and few hit projects projects to speak of. Kidman, conversely, avoided becoming poison to Hollywood executives by swearing off Catwoman, having instead spent the last 2 decades working with a bevy of auteur filmmakers, including Jonathan Glazer, George Miller, Noah Baumbach, Baz Luhrmann, Lee Daniels, Park Chan-wook, Werner Herzog, Yorgos Lanthimos, and Robert Eggers. That is one hell of a collection right there. While Berry has largely been confined to lowbrow genre films despite her considerable talent, Kidman has remained one of the most popular actresses of her generation, and even landed 3 additional Oscar nominations between 2011 and 2022.